Hello everyone, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about 1 to 10 power LPVOs, and the question is, are they worth it? Okay, so if you go on the internet and you look up videos on 1 to 10 power LPVOs, you're going to see videos from a whole bunch of scope gurus, right? And they're all going to generally tell you that no, they're not great. They're going to start listing all the shortcomings, right? They're going to talk about clarity. They're going to talk about color. They're going to talk about, some distortion. They're going to talk about weight. They're going to talk about length. So they're going to give you a whole bunch of reasons, why the 1 to 10 LPVO is not perfect. Okay, so yes, it is not perfect. There's definitely a whole bunch of compromises that we're making, but the question still remains: is it worth it? Okay, so when I think of a 1 to 10 LPVO, what do I want out of it? Okay, so I want to. It's primarily for distance shooting. Okay, I want to be able to shoot, 400 to 600 plus yards. And also have that one power capability where I can basically drop down to 10 yards and be able to make my hits, with just the flip of the dial. Okay, so now, some people say, hey, there's too many compromises. You can go with like a 2.5 to 10, and you can put a red dot on top of it. I've tried it. I don't like it. Extra weight, extra, gadgets on it. It's a lot of extra snag. I don't love that option right now. Okay, so I prefer a single scope on the gun. Okay, that goes from 1 power to 10 power. Okay, so again, there's a whole bunch of things that we're giving up. But again, the thing is, like, I have a goal here. The goal is I want to be able to hit 400, 500, 600 yards and be able to also go down to CQB distance. Does it accomplish that? Okay, how well does it accomplish that? And I guess more importantly, why does it accomplish the thing that it accomplishes? Where, and is that thing missing in, let's say, if you have like a 1 to 6 or a 1 to 10 or a 1 to 8, right? Is it is the 1 to 10 delivering something that the 1 to 8 can't deliver? And I got a 1 to 8 right here. This is the Primary Arms PLX 1 to 8. So this is a $1,500 scope. So I'm able to like compare these things, right? And I can tell you, hey, this is what this scope does that maybe this doesn't do so well. Okay, so we're going to be talking about, that's what we're going to be talking about in this video, and that's what I think is going to help determine is the 1 to 10 worth it. Okay, so I was shooting at 400 and 500 yards with this, actually with 2 scopes. Okay, so this one over here is the 1 to 10 by 28 in the 34 millimeter tube. Okay, from Primary Arms. This is a second focal plane. Okay, so this has been on a number of different rifles. I've done a number of videos on this, but this is a 1 to 10. I've had this for about 4 years, right? So I've done a bunch of videos on this. I've been working with this for a while. Before this, I had a Swamp Fox 1 to 10. So I also got a video on that. I worked on that for a while. I did get rid of that just because I wasn't too crazy about the reticle. I like the Primary Arms reticles better. Okay. I like the ACSS style, the combat reticles. But the point is, I also had worked with Swamp Fox 1 to 10. And then that was 4 years ago. And then I got this one 4 years ago, the 1 to 10 by 28 second focal plane. And then I think about 4 months ago, I got this 1 to 10 by 24 first focal plane from Primary Arms. Okay. So I've been working on this now for at least 4 months. I've done a number of videos on this, and I'm now at the point where I'm able to say, hey, this is what the scope delivers. Okay, so and over here, just for comparison, I've got this is the 1 to 8 PLX from Primary Arms. So this is a $1,500 scope. So different price ranges here. We got $1,500 1 to 8 first focal plane. Okay. And then we got this one here was about $700, right? This 1 to 10 first focal plane GLX. And then I've got the second focal plane was about something like $400, okay? Maybe $350, something like that. But I think, so that's also 1 to 10. So again, the goal here being that I want to be able to hit targets at 400, 500, 600 yards, and then quickly transition down to 10 yards with the throw lever and make my shots. Okay, so shooting at 300 yards, 400 yards. Okay, what do I need to make my hits? Okay, so I have here a paper that's basically half the size of a man, right? You know, head to belt. Okay, and it's about as wide as a man. So I shot this paper on the same day. This is like 4 days ago. I shot this paper without a bullseye, no bullseye over here. Okay, and what I found is that the groups were much wider than when I put the bullseye on here, right? And I intentionally put a gray one. I didn't put blue. I didn't put black. This gray kind of blended in a little bit, especially when you dial up to 10, because you lose a little bit of light. But the important thing here, right? The important thing is that 400 and 500 yards, okay, I was able to see the bullseye. Okay, so what that means is I had a fine aiming point as opposed to trying to aim someplace in the middle of the paper. Okay, so that is what the 1 to 10, right, delivers, that the 1 to 8 doesn't deliver so well. Okay, so even with this 1 to 8, you know, this 1 to 8 over here, PLX $1,500 scope, because this only goes to 8 power. What I find is that when I looking at 400, 500 yards, I can't see that bullseye so well. It's just a little bit too small. However, when I go up to 10 power, right, so that extra 2 magnification, okay, and this was a bright sunny day, okay, that extra 2 magnification allows me to see the bullseye, right, and have a fine aiming point. And that's what makes the difference. And that's why I say that 1 to 10 is worth it, okay, despite all the drawbacks, right? And there's a whole bunch of them. We'll go into it in a few minutes. Despite its drawbacks, that 10 magnification at 400 and 500 yards allows you to see the bullseye, even though it's actually gray and doesn't even stand out that much. I'm able to see it, and I have a fine aiming point, and that's what allowed me to make these hits here. Let's look at the hits. Now, this is the rifle I'm shooting. I was shooting this with this Palmetto 223 Wild, okay, stainless steel 18-inch barrel. Budget rifle. I think the whole thing cost me like, without the scope, it was like $550. Okay, so this is a Palmetto. Okay, so first I shot it at 300 yards. So the first grouping I put out there at 300 yards, oops, was right here. So that's these 5. It was 5-shot groups. 1, 2. That might have been just because it was a cold shot. It was way out there. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the total group, 5 shots, is 3 1/4 inches. Okay, so that's 1.8 MOA. Okay, and then the 4 out of the 5, okay, is 1.5 inches at 300 yards. Okay, that's a 0.5 MOA. Okay, and that's because I could see the bullseye, right? This bullseye at 300 yards. I put the in the case of the way that this has a 50-yard zero, so I'm using the top of the spine, which is the 1 mil line, as my holding point. Okay, now I had that on the bullseye here, right, and it shot right. What I did is I said, okay, let's do a 1/2 mil adjustment to the left, and then I shot another 5 shots. I didn't do it as well, right? So at 300 yards, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, I'm sorry. That's 6. That's about 6 inches, 6 1/4. But so yeah, fine. I didn't do so great on the second grouping, right? Whatever. I don't always shoot my best. But then I said, okay, I made another half adjustment. No, I did another 1/2 mil adjustment to the left, and I went back to 400 yards. Okay, so at 400 yards, again using the bullseye here, right, which I can see at 400 yards. I did a really nice group. Okay, so again with that 77 grain, it's a 77 grain. I'm using this on target 77 grain 223. So this is like the cheapest a 77 grain match grade ammunition that I could get. Okay, I bought this a few months ago. I don't remember what it was, but it was pretty cheap for 77 grains. That's why I got it. So at 400 yards, 400 yards, I got a 6.5 inch group at 400 yards, which comes out to a 1.6 MOA. Okay, so at 400 yards. So the reason why I was able to get this tight group at 400 yards is because I could see the bullseye, even though it's grayish, right? I could still see it, and my hold at 400 yards was the 2 mil mark, and I was, after the adjustments I made, I was able to like center perfectly on the paper. Okay, so at that particular moment there was no wind apparently, so it came in pretty nice. Okay, now I did move back to 500 yards. Okay, so at 500 yards, again I have this grayish bullseye here. Okay, the group obviously did open up, so I did 2 5-shot groups, so a total of 10 shots. So I was able to get 7 out of the 10 on the paper, right? You can see the hits: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 out of the 10 on the paper. Apparently the wind must have started pushing to the left a little bit, because 3 of the shots I think came out here somewhere. But I still managed to get out of the 7 out of the 10 that I got on the paper. That's a 3.4 MOA. Okay, at 500 yards. Okay. So again, the reason why I'm able to do this is because I have that fine aiming point. I'm not using the whole paper as a target. I'm using that bullseye right there as the target. And the saying is, aim small, miss small. Okay, so if you have a fine aiming point and you focus on that, your groups are going to be a lot tighter. Okay, let's put this down for a minute. So I also had this Vepr. This basically is an AK that shoots 308s, right? So this is the Vepr 308 AK, and this has that 1 to 10 second focal plane scope. And with this one, now on this one I didn't have a bullseye. Okay, so I did not have a bullseye on this. On this one, I'm using like just the center of the paper. And at 300 yards, yeah, the groups opened up considerably. I got 4 out of 5 at 4.3 MOA. Okay, not terrible, but the point is I didn't have that fine aiming point. And that was at 300 yards. At 400 yards, the group. Well, actually, I got 1, 2, 3 shots at 8 inches, and then the fourth one opened over here, all the way down here to 20 inches on the fourth one. So again, there was a big disadvantage here in not having that fine aiming point. Okay, so I'm trying to basically just I've got the let's say at 400 yards, I'm using the 2 mil line, and I'm just trying to hold it in the center. So being able to see a bullseye, right, and that might be an imprint on somebody's shirt, right, or it might be a belt buckle, or it might be a helmet, But if you can pick out a fine aiming point and hold on that rather than just a big blob, right, that's going to increase your accuracy. So, and I've done this. This isn't the only time I've done this, right? So I've seen that when I'm shooting with a magnification where I can see the bullseye, I shoot tighter groups. If I'm shooting and I don't see the bullseye, the groups open up. Okay, so now there might be people out there that, hey, they don't need to see a bullseye. Their eye is able to center perfectly on the paper, and that's fine. That works for you. That works for you. But for me, it helps if I can see the bullseye and I can focus on that. And that's what the 10X does for me, that the 8X is not able to do so well at 400 and 500 yards. Okay, and again, I have a premium, right, primary arms PLX scope here, $1,500 scope. So clear glass, Japanese glass, all that. Still, the more magnification makes a difference. Okay, more magnification helps you get your hits on target at further distance. despite the shortcomings. Okay, so what are some of these shortcomings that we're talking about? Well, the first one is going to be size. Okay, so even with this SLX scope, right? This thing is very long. Okay, so the whole thing, I think it's 11 inches long, and particularly the part from here to here is also pretty long, which means that you have to basically push the scope forward. Okay, so hold this on this one. It is about 6 inches from the belly over here of the turrets. It's about 6 inches back. Okay, so that's with the second focal plane scope. Now, the second focal point scope, I've had issues with it because what happens is, in some instances, if you're trying to shoot prone or in some awkward position, right, or particularly with this rifle over here, where the height on this is not correct, really. I have to put my jaw on the stock in order to center my eyeball. Okay, so what I found is in some awkward positions, I would really like to dial this back, right, to maybe a 4 or a 5, just because the position's so awkward, so I can get a better eye box. But what happens is when you do that with the second focal plane scope, the measurements, the bullet drop, the mill lines, the range estimating, none of that's accurate. Okay, so you have to be in 10 magnification with this with the second focal plane scope, so that your bullet drop and all the other measurements will be accurate. So for that reason, I will tell you guys, absolutely do not get a second focal plane scope if you plan to use the bullet drop, the range estimating, all the features that are in the reticle. Okay, and if you're getting a scope like this, right, you want to have all those features. You want to have the auto ranging, the bullet drop, the mill lines, to be able to lead targets. You want all that in the reticle. Okay? So that's the reason why, as soon as this scope became available, right? So the 1 to 10 by 1 to 10 first focal plane, I jumped on it. Okay, because this is something I had been looking for. Because the nice thing with this is, if I'm in an awkward position, and the 10 is like, okay, whatever reason I'm shooting awkward, I can't get, I just dial this back down, let's say to 5 or 6, right? So now the eye box is more forgiving, right? And I can still see the reticle with all the measurements on it. I can do all my range estimating. So that's like an absolute for a 1 to 10 scope. It has to be first focal plane, okay? Now, when I was shooting this, I found that I did not have any issues with the eye box. I was able to get into position without too much trouble. Okay, the thing I have found with this is, first of all, it's a very long, the other one was 11 inches. This one is 12 inches, okay? So this is very long, okay? And in addition to that, there's a lot of length from the turret's back. So whereas the other one was 6 inches from here to there, this one is 6 3/4 inches, almost 7 inches from here to there, which means that I have to push the scope as far forward as possible, and that's still enough room, because normally I would keep my stock here, and there I have terrible I have terrible scope shadow. The eye box is not right, so I have to extend this, right, in order to be able to get on the gun and not see any scope shadow. Okay, so this forces me to make this a little bit longer, which is not ideal, because even if I go down to 1 power now, right, for CQB, that's not ideal for me. Okay, that's not ideal. The issue here is that the eye relief on this is 4.5 inches, right? So 4.5 inches, my eye needs to be like way back here, which means I got to extend the stock a lot. And I suppose the solution to this, because here's the thing, the rail mount has to be on the upper receiver. I've tried sliding it forward on this a little bit. It actually threw me through, because I tried taking it off, putting it back on slightly forward, and my zero was like way off. Okay, I could have adjusted it, but I'm like, I don't want to do that. So I just brought it back. I kept it on the upper receiver. At some point, hopefully, maybe I'll find a scope mount that pushes the scope even further, But again, as you push the scope further forward, now you got more weight further out on the gun. Okay, so that's like one of the drawbacks. Okay, actually like the main drawback I have found is that the eye relief is such, right, that I have to extend the stock in order to be, be able to get on this gun in any awkward position and not see scope shadow. And that's really the test, right? You want to be able to, like, get into these awkward positions, left side, right side, and get on the gun, right, without seeing scope shadow. Okay. So that's really the test, right? Don't just do things perfect, because life isn't perfect. Sometimes you gotta do things weird, right? So, so that's the main drawback. That in order for me to be able to get on this gun, right, in any weird position and not get scope shadow, I have to extend the stock, or I have to get a different scope mount that will allow this to go forward another, like, whatever, 2 inches, and then I'm just going to have more weight forward, so it makes more sense to just extend the stock and just live with that little uncomfort. When I go, so that's the main issue I've had with this scope. When I go from 8 magnification to 10, and this was a sunny day I was shooting, yes, I could see that there was a little drop in the light, right? It wasn't as bright when I was looking at the scope, but the thing is that I could still see that gray bullseye on the paper, okay? So even with the loss of light coming through the scope, when I maxed out the magnification, the end result was I could see the bullseye better, even though it was, a little bit less lit. The color wasn't as bright. So it's like, okay, so what do I need to do? I need to hit my target. Where do I need to hit my target? I need to be able to see the bullseye, right? So where am I going to see the bullseye best? And what I found is practically it was in the max magnification. Another thing I have found with this 1 to 10 is that for example, when you're in 1 power, if your head is not in the perfect position, and then you go, if you look to the outer edges, you can see a little bit of distortion. If you go up to like a 2, you don't see it there. So it's only in 1x where you will sometimes see distortion if your eyeballs are not in the perfect position. And what I mean by that, because you could still be seeing wall to wall, right, in the scope. But if you just move your head forward just a little bit, it's really small. All of a sudden you start seeing a little distortion at the edges. That's something that I do not see in the 1 to 8, right, in this PLX, right? So with this, if I move my head to the sides a little bit, I really don't see that distortion. I'll get into the shadows before I start seeing distortion. This PLX is, the outer walls of the scope are a little bit thinner, but I think that's more of a feature of it being a PLX versus a GLX. The PLX, of course, being the $1,500 one versus the $700 one. So we're not gonna harp too much on that. So some other things that I've had issues with. This is more of a quality control thing. The Allen screws and the Allen, because these are resettable turrets, right? You can reset your zero. The Allen screws and the Allen keys that they sent did not match up. Okay, I had to send it back in order for them to try and match it up, and they, in the end, one of them didn't match up anyway. I had to figure out something on my own. Basically, I found a different Allen key. So there was a bit of a quality control issue there with Allen keys and Allen screws for the turret not matching up. The first one I got that I received had a parallax problem, right? Because the scopes are supposed to be parallax for 100 yards, and I think the one that I got, the first one I received, was parallax for like 10 yards. Because I could see like, a ladybug at 10 yards, and I could see fine at 100 yards. But then when I went out to 200 yards, all of a sudden, like the reticle and the target were like I couldn't get both the reticle and the target into focus at the same time. So that was a parallax problem. The one that I received after that, the second one, right? By the way, I paid for these. I mean, this is not like they're giving me free stuff or anything like that. The second one, so I sent back the one that had a parallax problem. The second one that I got, the parallax was fine, but the problem was that the Allen keys and the Allen screws was like nothing was matching up, right? And the Allen screws were like some weird measurement in millimeters that it was just not common. So they had to figure out what it was, and they had to match it up. So it went back a second time. They sent it back, right? They said that this time they said they were going to hand select one for me. Parallax seems fine. One of the Allen keys and Allen screws didn't match up, but the others did okay. I said, well, you know what? Fine, I'll live with this. Okay. So for the $700 or $750 where I paid for this taxes, there's definite compromises. Okay, there's definite compromises both in performance, right? Because like I said, there's going to be, you know, I talked about the different performances, compromises. There's a weight and size compromise. There's a bit of a quality control compromise, but I'm able to make my hits at 400, 500 yards a lot better than I can with, you know, an 8X, right? With this 10X, I'm able to make those hits better than with the 8X because I'm able to focus on the smaller bullseye, okay? And also I'm able to get down to 10 yards, right, just by flipping the throw lever, and, you know, I can make my hits. Now, when I go, here's the thing now, and I've talked about this in other videos, when you use the diopter here in the back to basically, you're supposed to focus the reticle, but that also kind of ends up focusing the target. If you're sitting like quietly on the range, right, and you got like nothing to do, right, and you're nitpicking stuff, and you look at something at 200 yards, right, through the scope, and then you at something fine like the bullseye, right, and then you look at a bullseye at 10 yards, you're gonna see that either at, you know, you focus your diopter, and you're gonna see that it's really not set and forget. If you want it to be like you're not gonna get it perfect, but if you want it to be at the best focus that you can get, the best focus that you can get is going to be different at 10 yards, and it's going to be different at 200 yards. Okay. However, okay, that's again looking for perfection. Realistically shooting, okay, you don't need it to be the focus to be that perfect. Okay. So when I was shooting this at the 400 and 500 yards, I was at a location where you know, 300 yards I could shoot at my leisure, but when I moved to 400 yards and 500 yards, I had to make those shots fast, right? You know, I had to walk out to a position, make those shots fast, because I wasn't the only person on that property, and basically I didn't want somebody driving across the area that I was shooting. So I needed to make those shots fast, okay? Because I was able to look, all right, nobody's coming, bam, bam, bam. So there was a little bit of pressure there, okay? So under that pressure, right, it wasn't a whole lot of pressure, but there was a little bit of pressure of having to get those shots off fast. I really didn't notice that it was like ever so slightly, that the focus was slightly off. Like, it just didn't matter. As long as I could see my bullseye at 400 yards and 500 yards, I was fine, okay? And likewise, I didn't change, I didn't do any adjustment on the diopter. This is exactly where it was when I was shooting 400 and 500 yards. And now when I get down to 1X and I get on target, yeah, I can see these targets. You know, it's not, I mean, if I try to focus on something like really fine, I'm going to see that, yeah, the focus is ever so slightly off, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I can definitely make my shots, okay? So the focus is going to be ever so slightly off, right? There's going to be there's going to be a focusing difference between, let's say, 400 yards and 10 yards. You know, and it doesn't matter, okay? You can sit there and you can nitpick at it and you can say it's less than perfect, but as far as making those shots, you can make the shots, okay? So it depends on, so it really comes down to, like, how perfect does the scope need to be for you? What's more important, okay? Making your shots or just getting a scope that's perfect? For me, it's just, you know what, I need to be able to make my hits at 500 yards, and I need a gun that works really well at CQB distance. So for me, the 1 to 10 GLX, it has to be a first focal plane, is worth it. Okay, so that's my opinion on this after having worked on this on a whole bunch of months and years. If you go back to the other 10X scopes that I've worked with, that's my opinion, that you do give up some things when you go to 10X, but you know, as far as making your hits at distance, the 10X will allow you to focus on the bullseye a little bit better. which I think is going to give you better hits. Okay, so let me know what you guys think. Drop some comments below, and I'll talk to you all soon. Hey everyone, I want to add one more advantage that I saw to the 10 power versus the 8 power magnification. Okay, at 300 yards, I remember when I was shooting, okay, I could see, like I was shooting into the paper, so I couldn't spot the impacts, but I could see the dust rising behind the paper target. Okay, so what that means is if I had, let's say, shot off to the left, there's a better chance with the 10x that I would see that the impacts are off to the left or off to the right. So the higher magnification will give you a better chance of spotting impacts. Now, there's a lot that goes into that. For example, if the dirt's wet, right, there's no dust that's going to come up, or if you're shooting into something that just is not going to give off any indication, you're not going to see it. So under certain circumstances, shooting into certain types of backgrounds, the 10x gives you a better chance of spotting the impacts. However, it may not always be the case depending on what you're shooting it to. Okay.